Greetings everyone, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, and I'm back to bring you another episode review from Season 7 of The Loud House. So let's get right into it. Today's episode is Dread of the Class. In this episode, Ronnie Anne needs to pass one more test in order to graduate from Luan's pranking academy, and her test is to pull one over on Luan before sundown. I know this doesn't really qualify as an April Fool's Day episode because the holiday is never referenced, but the story makes you believe that was the original intention. However, it's not Luan who does the pranking. It's actually Ronnie Anne, and this was her first big leading role in The Loud House following Forks and Knives Out in Season 6. In fact, this is the most screen time she's ever had in a single Loud House episode in the last few seasons, and her performance here was absolutely incredible. With her first exposure to Luan's practical jokes back in Season 1, and knowing her history of pulling pranks on Lincoln and her own family in the main series and the Casa Grandes, which includes both the episodes from Season 4 of The Loud House and the actual spin-off, the idea of Ronnie Anne being the first one to graduate from this pranking academy Luan set up is what I consider the ultimate validation and coming full circle moment for this very consistent part of her character. So yeah, it's pretty clear Ronnie Anne was the biggest positive of the episode. The story itself was also a big positive for being very engaging with its usual brand of wacky cartoon comedy, but I have to admit the way the plot moved along did get very repetitive. Ronnie Anne sets up a prank, she thinks Luan is going to fall right into it but somehow manages to avoid it. Ronnie Anne and Lincoln fall victim to the prank instead, and it's Luan who ends up getting the last laugh. That's pretty much a good chunk of the episode. It may seem questionable as to how Luan was able to conveniently but successfully avoid all those pranks even when it looked as though she was going to fall victim to any one of them, but then you remember she told Ronnie Anne she had until sundown to prank her. With Luan being the master and knowing her student was going to be coming after her in some way, she pretty much expected Ronnie Anne and Lincoln to follow her everywhere she went. She knew she couldn't take any chances and was therefore always one step ahead of Ronnie Anne, even to the point where she had Benny fill in for her at a birthday party. Benny may not be good at pranking and still has a lot to learn, but you gotta give the guy props for being able to accurately mimic his own girlfriend's voice. Eventually, Ronnie Anne and Lincoln chase after Luan and they wind up at a giant corn maze at Liam's farm, the maze being an obvious creation of Luan's. Once again, the repetition of how the plot moves along became very noticeable. Basically, Luan set up a bunch of traps for Ronnie Anne and Lincoln to fall into while they were looking for her inside the maze. They think they spotted Luan, they try to hit her with a prank, it turns out to not be Luan, and they end up being chased and attacked by animals. Not to mention getting covered in horse manure, honey, and cornmeal on 2 occasions. But just when they think their time has run out after Luan traps them in a giant square made of hay, Liam's pig Virginia not only comes to the rescue, but she also helps Ronnie Anne by subjecting Luan to a prank that involved mud, cornmeal, and some very hungry crows. Ronnie Anne was able to pull this off thanks in part to the one phrase Luan mentioned throughout the episode: work with what you've got. Gotta love that subtle but brilliant foreshadowing. Ronnie Anne was looking at Virginia and was pondering something just before she went inside the maze. She knew she was going to need help, so Ronnie Anne got Virginia to help her pull one over on Luan, and it all worked out. A pig operating a forklift may sound stupid on paper, but in the cartoon universe it looks absolutely hilarious. So in the end, Luan hands Ronnie Anne her official academy diploma upon passing her final test, proving she's just as good at pranking as the master who trained her, and the episode concludes with Benny once again showing how he really needs to work on his pranking skills. Just keep dumping your money into your girlfriend's comedy program, dude. You'll pass one day, but somehow I doubt it. Overall, this episode was an absolute blast from beginning to end. Ronnie Anne had one of her best performances in the series. The humor and creativity regarding all the pranks were great by Loud House standards. The story and pacing were very good even though it got repetitive in certain places, and the ending with Ronnie Anne finally coming out on top was both very clever and rewarding. Luan also had a great role in this episode. She proved how even though she's the master of pranking and knows how to avoid falling for them, she also demonstrated how even the most experienced person can sometimes make mistakes and be made to look foolish in their own field of expertise. Remember in Fool's Paradise when she pranked her entire family and then her family was able to beat her at her own game by having her fall victim to her usual brand of trickery? That's the kind of vibe I got from the ending of this episode, and honestly, it was done a lot better here. Seeing someone get the better of Luan as a test to prove they're truly talented at pranking instead of doing it out of revenge just feels more gratifying in my opinion. One last highlight I want to mention would be the vision Ronnie Anne had while meditating. It was so bizarre, and yet it made a lot of sense considering it was Luan occupying her #1 student's innermost thoughts. But yes, this was an excellent showcase and coming full circle moment for the prank-loving side of Ronnie Anne's character, and I'll go so far as to say this was Luan's best role of Season 7. As I said, this may not be an April Fool's Day episode despite the atmosphere are giving off the vibe that it very well could have been. Even though it's not, I can still say this was the best prank-related episode of the entire series. Feel free to disagree, but that's what I'm sticking to. With that said, I give Dread of the Class a 9.9 out of 10. Well folks, that concludes my review of Dread of the Class. So I gotta ask, what did you guys think of this episode? Sound off in the comments below, and be sure to click that subscribe button for more Loud House related content. That's going to do it for me. I'll catch you guys for the next video, but until then, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, signing off. Peace out, home slices.